So, the final ever Dutch Grand Prix at the legendary circuit Zandvoort. Wow. It wasn't just a race, you guys. It was a weekend entirely defined by razor-thin margins, totally splintered team dynamics, and split-second decisions that completely reshaped the grid. We've gathered all the data, the telemetry, and the raw radio communications to unpack exactly what went down. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, you really have to ask yourself, did we just witness a masterclass in high-stakes racing, or were we watching a strategic civil war unfold in real time? Think about the immense pressure here. We had all 22 drivers gambling on starting with slick tires on a very damp, treacherous track. The stakes literally could not have been higher. And as you'll see, that gamble led to some absolutely spectacular physical and strategic breakdowns.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to dissect this race through 5 key controversies. We'll start with the physical chaos of the pre-race setup, move into Max Verstappen's shocking first-lap DNF, then Hamilton's friction with the Ferrari pit wall, dive into the potential sacrifice of George Russell at Mercedes, and finally, look at the ultimate impact on the championship standings.
Okay, Section 1, Chaos at Circuit Zandvoort, the pre-race setup.
Picture this. Before the lights even went out, a massive, heavy downpour drenched the sweeping sand dunes of Zandvoort. That threw an insane amount of pressure onto the drivers and the pit walls right from the jump. You've got McLaren's Lando Norris sitting on pole, with George Russell and championship leader Kimi Antonelli breathing down his neck. Further back, we had Lewis Hamilton in 5th, Charles Leclerc in 6th. But look down at P7, local hero Max Verstappen, starting unusually low down the order after feeling unwell all weekend. Basically, it was a grid just waiting for a spark.
Section 2. Verstappen's shocking first-lap DNF. The high adrenaline unpredictability of lap 1 completely flipped the script for the home crowd. The margins for error? Absolutely non-existent. Right at lights out, Verstappen was immediately under pressure. He gets squeezed onto the grass by Hamilton and he's drag racing Liam Lawson, but the real disaster hits at turn 14. Navigating that famous high-speed banking, his right rear wheel just clips the damp white line. The rear steps out violently and boom, a massive crash into the barriers that literally ripped the left wheels off his car. It was so intense that Lawson jumped straight on the radio, totally in shock, asking if Max was okay, because the crash was, quote, effing huge.
15G, just think about that kind of force for a second. Despite the terrifying optics of that crash and spinning back out into oncoming traffic, Verstappen was incredibly fortunate to walk away uninjured. In fact, he actually bypassed the mandatory medical center evaluation entirely, all because the impact registered just a hair below that 15G threshold. It's a huge testament to modern safety for sure, but man, what a devastating end to his home race.
After the dust settled, Verstappen was surprisingly candid about the whole thing. He owned up to it, admitting that driver error definitely played a part. He saw a dry line and just accelerated a split second too early. But he was also crystal clear about the broader picture. He insisted that Red Bull is currently only the 4th fastest team on the grid, and that there are simply no magic things they can pull out of a hat to fix their pace deficit right now.
All right, moving on to Section 3, Hamilton versus the Ferrari pit wall.
Now we're shifting from physical track chaos to some seriously intense strategic friction. A massive civil war began brewing right after a red flag restart, around lap 42. The core issue? A massive tire offset. Hamilton was on a fresh strategy and quickly caught right up to the rear wing of his teammate, Charles Leclerc, who was seriously struggling on much older rubber. Hamilton was quick to get on the radio, explicitly telling his team, hey, I'm quicker, and my tires are in way better shape.
And here is where communication just totally breaks down. Ferrari finally calls Leclerc into the pit, but wanting to protect his own track position, Leclerc actually ignores the instruction at first. Because of that hesitation, Hamilton gets severely held up behind his teammate for an entire extra lap. When Leclerc finally did pit, a furious Hamilton keyed his radio with a heavily sarcastic message. Great way of wasting time, guys. Good job. Ouch.
And you know what? That rage was entirely backed up by the hard data. 0.849 seconds. That was the gap at the checkered flag between George Russell in 3rd and Lewis Hamilton in 4th. Hamilton missed the final podium spot by less than a single second. He firmly believes that the time wasted behind a dithering Leclerc was exactly what cost him the trophy. So we are left looking at 2 very different perspectives here. On the driver's side, both Hamilton and Leclerc were deeply frustrated.
Hamilton felt completely robbed of a podium, and Leclerc felt that pitting him so close to George Russell locked him into a really frustrating P5 finish. But up on the pit wall, Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur defended the silence. He argued they intentionally withheld strategy details from Hamilton to maintain tactical secrecy, basically keeping the radio quiet so competitors wouldn't anticipate their moves.
Section 4. Did Mercedes sacrifice George Russell?
This brings us to the real climax of our storylines today, diving deep into the complex internal politics unfolding late in the race over at Mercedes. Here is exactly how it broke down. Step 1. Esteban Ocon's Haas stops on track at turn 5. Step 2. This triggers a late virtual safety car on lap 56. Step 3. Mercedes decides to split their strategy. They pit Kimi Antonelli for softs to cover Ferrari, but they leave George Russell out on old hard tires. Then we hit step 4. On lap 66, Russell's engineer Marcus Dudley gets on the radio with a highly controversial instruction: invert the cars down the pit straight.
You can literally feel the frustration in Russell's immediate pushback. He gets on the mic and says, is he going to go for the win, or is he planning to catch Norris? Russell was clearly not happy about it, but he ultimately complied, letting Antonelli through into turn 1. However, that move left Russell completely defenseless, struggling on old hard rubber while the Ferraris closed in fast from behind.
Naturally, critics immediately started asking if Mercedes sacrificed Russell just to favor their championship leader. Team principal Toto Wolff came out and defended the swap as a completely normal order. He argued that fighting on track would lose time and risk their double podium finish. And, surprisingly enough, Russell took a highly diplomatic stance post-race. He actually agreed it was the right decision, citing strict Mercedes protocol that dictates drivers on different tire strategies must invert positions without battling each other.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, the championship standings impact.
Take a look at these numbers, because this is exactly why Mercedes made that incredibly tough call. By inverting the cars, they secured a second-place finish for Kimi Antonelli. That finish preserved Antonelli's massive 59-point lead in the Drivers' Championship, bringing him up to a very comfortable 242 points. Meanwhile, the strategic calls across the grid left George Russell and Lewis Hamilton dead tied at 183 points each. When you look at the math, the data makes the team's overarching priorities absolutely crystal clear.
So, looking at all the telemetry, the radio logs, and the final points we've explored today, I want to leave you with this to think about. Which team made the most controversial call? Was it Ferrari's tactical hesitation that arguably cost Hamilton a podium? Or was it Mercedes strictly enforcing those team orders on Russell? It just goes to show how brutally difficult the strategic side of the sport really is when the pressure is on. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, always keep questioning the data behind the grid. Catch you next time.